They had just learned some hard lessons in a small city in southwest Georgia, Albany. Here, Martin Luther King suffered what some have called one of his greatest defeats. The Albany campaign started in 1961. Young organizers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, came here to help the black community organize against segregation. In November, a federal agency ordered the desegregation of all facilities used for interstate travel. SNCC Representative Charles Sherrod sent students into the Trailways bus station to see if local authorities would arrest them.
Some of us really didn't think they would get arrested because this was a federal mandate. They mess with us now, but they were going to get the federal government on them, you know. Nobody was going to mess with the federal government, we thought.
But the students were arrested. Sherrod and SNCC continued to work with the community, finding it rewarding because of a special quality they found in the people of Albany. The black community attacked segregation wherever it existed. Demonstrations took place throughout the city, at libraries, schools, movie theaters, and City Hall.
And we just push pressure. Now, sometimes we don't know who controls this, who controls the other. So we stomp around and stomp and see whose feet we get. And then somebody's going to holler, "Oh, you got me." So then when he hollers, that's the direction we go in. And that was the general strategy. We didn't know what we were doing.
You want to know what the Negro in Albany is going to do? He's going to do whatever is necessary to ensure his freedom.
Dr. William G. Anderson was president of the Albany Movement, an umbrella organization formed to coordinate all the civil rights groups in the community. By mid-December, Dr. Anderson became concerned because more than 500 demonstrators had been jailed.
These were common, ordinary, everyday people, housewives, cooks, maids, laborers, children out of school. We had made no provisions for these people going to jail because we did not anticipate the mass arrest. So we concluded that night that we are into something that really we need some expert help in.
Dr. Anderson invited Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. to help in Albany. King brought with him the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a civil rights organization based in black churches and led by ministers.
They had asked Martin to come down just to make a speech, and he went only to make a speech.
So Dr. King, right, he came there with not even an overnight bag or toothbrush. I responded to my call, and I do not anticipate that he expected to get as intimately involved with the Albany movement as he did.
Dr. Anderson got carried away and in public asked Martin to demonstrate, to lead the march with him, and he agreed. And then he got put in jail, and with no plan, no thought of what we were going to do.
King accepted release from jail. As he divided his time between Albany and other commitments, SNCC grew unhappy with SCLC's role.
When Dr. King would come in, we'd get 2,000 or 3,000 people without much effort, so that was in our favor. But when he left, it was more difficult for us to get people to come. So that this phenomena of Doc flying into places where we worked and then flying out to another place, which was needed, made it difficult for us to organize.
Well, in Albany, we were like firefighters. The fire was already burning, and I try to say this as charitably as I can. SNCC was in over its head, and they wanted the international and national attention that Martin Luther King's presence would generate, but they did not want the input of his organization.
I don't have but one speech. I don't have but one message as I journey around this country. And it is a message which says that I am convinced that the most potent weapon available to oppress people as they struggle for freedom and justice is the weapon of nonviolence.
As the movement took the nonviolent struggle into the streets of Albany, Organizers expected the same reaction encountered in most Southern communities: police brutality.
All right, let's stop it right here.
But they had never met a law enforcement officer like this one, Albany's chief of police, Laurie Pritchett.
You're welcome to picket. This grouping up here is going to stop. If we allow 2 here in this block, and the others will move out. You'll allow 2 picketers in this block at your front of the city hall where you're picketed. You can leave 2 here, or you can go. Others that don't go and continue, you'll be arrested. Now let's have 2 in this area right here where you picket. I got you.
I did research. Found his method was nonviolence. That his method was to fill the jail, same as Gandhi in India. And once he filled the jails, we'd have no capacity to arrest, and then we'd have to give in to his demands.
Pritchett made sure his jails wouldn't fill up. He had planned carefully.
I had sat down and took a map and went 15 miles, how many jails was in a 15-mile radius, how many was in a 30-mile radius, on up to maybe 50 or 60-mile radius. And I'd contacted those authorities. They'd assured us that we could use their facilities. And we had, when the mass arrest started, we'd have marches, and there'd be 200, 300. At one time there, I think we had almost 2,000, but none in our jail.
You have to understand that going to jail was probably one of the most feared things in rural Georgia. There were many blacks who were arrested in small towns in Georgia, never to be heard from again. We have every reason to believe many of these were lynched. So going to jail was no small thing.
Dr. Steele, what are the conditions there? How is it crowded?
Yeah, very crowded.
How many is that cell supposed to hold?
They don't hold very many because we all sit on the floor and some of them.
Is that so? It's built to hold 10, and they have 69 in there. Uh-huh.
Because Chief Pritchett sent prisoners into these jails, some question how nonviolent he really was.
I think the apt description was slick. He did have enough intelligence to read Dr. King's book, and he called from that a way to avoid the confrontation and inducing the great ferment in the national community by being non-brutal rather than being non-violent. It's bizarre to say that a segregationist system or a law enforcement official of a segregationist system could be nonviolent, because first of all, nonviolence works in a moral climate, and segregation is not a moral climate.
I remember a statement that Chief Pritchett made to me one time when he says, you know, Sherrod, it's just a matter of mind over matter. I don't mind, and you don't matter.
Against the solid resistance of city officials, the Albany movement found strength in mass meetings and song.
Most of the mass meeting was singing in Albany. There was more singing than was talking. And so most of the work that was done in terms of taking care of movement business had to do with nurturing the people who had come. And there would be 2 or 3 people who would talk, but basically songs was the bed of everything. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
July 1962. Dr. King and Reverend Ralph Abernathy began serving a 45-day sentence. They were determined to stay in jail to protest Albany segregation. But 3 days later, they were released. A stunned Dr. King explained that someone had mysteriously paid their fines.
At which time the chief said to us that we had been released. In other words, that our fine had been paid. I said, well, Chief, we want to serve this time. His only response then was, God knows, Reverend, I don't want you in my jail.
I knew that if he stayed in jail, we'd continue to have problems. So I talked to some people. I said, we've got to get him out. And once we do, I think he'll leave here. And arrangements were made. Frankly, I don't know who the man was that paid the bond.
But it was done at your request?
Yes, it was done at my request. And it sort of surprised Dr. King. This is one time that only time I've ever seen him when he seemed where he didn't know which way to go.
All right, let's go. Smiling for the birdie, look at it.
In late July, the Albany movement received another setback. At the city's request, federal judge J. Robert Elliott issued a restraining order to end the demonstrations which had been going on for almost 9 months. Frustrated by the federal court action, Dr. King called for President Kennedy to intervene, but Kennedy remained distant.
The president had decided that he was going to delegate the civil rights matter to the Attorney General, and that was going to be a primary area of responsibility for the Attorney General. And the president was going to spend his time dealing with other parts of the administration policy, and especially, of course, foreign affairs.